So, there's a question I ask myself every single day, multiple times a day, pretty much whenever I'm just stopping and having a bit of a think. No, it's not, is this a dream? But it is probably the most powerful lucid dreaming technique that you're not using. It's not a technique in the traditional sense. You can't throw an acronym on it, you can't put it in a fancy course and sell it. But it is mental training that is the foundations of a lucid mind. And honestly, most of you aren't going to like this. It's pretty uncomfortable. It's the kind of thing that most people run a mile from. So if you can make it to the end of this video, you're doing better than most people. And you'll also have something new for your mental toolkit that won't only give you more lucid dreams, but will give you a lucid life. Speaking of mental toolkits, today's video is sponsored by Aura. Aura is a mental wellness app with things like meditation, CBT, hypnosis, and soundscapes. But the difference is it learns what works for you, and so it becomes more personalized over time. I've put together a playlist over there called Mind Spa. It's a minimalist audio mix designed to keep your mind quiet and focused. I use it for morning naps or simply when I want to wind down. There's no voices, no fluff, just clean, calming sound. If you want to give Aura and my playlist a try, use the link in the video description and the pinned comment. The first 500 people to sign up will get a 7-day free trial and 25% off. Okay, let's get back to the video. Mental floss. When was the last time you cleaned your brain? Probably never. You've probably never given it a good mental floss in the same way that you clean your teeth, but your brain is considerably more important than your teeth. But before anyone calls me out, and to be technical, yes, every time you dream, your brain is technically giving itself a bit of a cleanup, but I'm talking about you personally. When was the last time you did an audit of your mind? And I'm not saying this to be funny, but you have a dirty mind. Yes, you probably do have a dirty mind, but you have a dirty mind. It's filled with garbage, with rubbish, with trash, with thoughts that you should have thrown away many, many years ago. But the problem is, we're never taught how to clean our minds. In fact, we're kind of told to do the opposite. In our society, it's generally considered to be a good thing if you're a confident person, if you're someone who knows what they're talking about. But when it comes to lucid dreaming, we need to develop humility, intellectual humility, in order to recognize when we've made a mistake. And the most common mistake for lucid dreamers is thinking that this is all real. The assumption that all experiences are waking experiences are a form of mental dirt. They're some of the trash that we need to take out as lucid dreamers, but it's just the tip of the iceberg. Sleuth paste. Right, so you've probably seen those TV shows where they go to someone's house and give it a big cleanup. And normally they focus on people who are hoarders and their house is just a complete and utter tip, door to door of just boxes and junk and rubbish all over the place. And normally when you see something like that, the average person just balks at the experience. It feels icky and disgusting. But that's what we're like with our brains. We cling on to every thought, every idea that we've ever come across. We are essentially mental hoarders. And when you're watching one of those shows, you probably do what I do, which is to scream at the telly, just throw it away, get rid of the rubbish. But they don't, and that's how they become hoarders. They keep bringing new things in and never throwing old things out. When it comes to physical items, most of us are pretty good at that. We know when something needs to be thrown away because it's obvious, but it's not so obvious with a human brain. And this is why in my books and my talks I talk about the detective mindset. It's something which I like to call sleuth paste. It's a way of cleaning your brain through active observation and critical thinking. So how do we clean our minds with a bit of mental floss and a little bit of sleuth paste? Mental hygiene. So here's a pretty awkward question for you, and it's awkward for all of us, and that's why it's important. Over the past year, how many times have you said, I'm wrong about that? just admitted that you were completely wrong, compared to how many times you argued something believing you were right. Which one wins? And if you're being brutally honest with yourself, and most people find this hard to do, you spend far more of your time trying to prove your points than admitting you're wrong, because there's this idea that being wrong is bad and being right is good. But what if that idea itself is wrong? What if being wrong is the first step to understanding, whereas acting as if you know it all is actually restrictive? And that brings us neatly to the question. The question. Okay, so what is the question? What is the mental floss? What is the sleuth paste? Well, prepare to be a bit disappointed, and I'm sure many people are going to click away and run away at this point, but it's a really simple question. Every day, I ask myself as often as possible, what am I wrong about? And I know it doesn't sound deep or mystical or esoteric or exciting. In fact, it sounds kind of awkward and difficult and a bit icky because we're having to pick apart our brains and feel a bit bad about ourselves. And if you are thinking that way, well, then the mental floss is working, because here's a question for you. Why do you feel that lucid dreaming or mind exploration should feel deep or meaningful or interesting? Why isn't it sometimes going to be practical and straightforward and a little bit awkward? Maybe, just maybe, that's something you're wrong about. And I'm not saying you are, but it's something you should investigate. And I know this is something that makes people feel defensive and awkward, and I'll probably get a bunch of angry comments because of this video. So instead of aiming it towards you, let's look at me and the things I'm wrong about. So here's an example where the question, what am I wrong about, changed how I thought. So I've been studying Buddhism since I was about 14 years old. I used to go off to Buddhist monasteries on a pretty much weekly basis as part of a Buddhist group. And I always really liked the idea that in Buddhism, you would simply have these moments of mindfulness where you would see reality for what it is without thoughts getting in the way. And that's a really compelling idea, isn't it? And it's been with me since I was very young. But it was only recently, when I've been doing this meditation, this self-focus, this mental sleuthery, that I thought, well, I better just check that thought, because I've been carrying that around with me my entire life. It's part of my mental baggage, part of my identity. And then I stopped to think, well, is it possible to see reality directly? Because everything I've learned about neuroscience, about how the mind and body works, tells me that our experience of reality is the end of an equation. It is already processed through thinking. So this idea in Buddhism that you can see reality directly isn't true, because the reality you see is processed. It's already been through the filter of you. And here's a slightly more embarrassing example. So I was at a festival and there was a group of people talking about lucid dreaming, and there was a guy who was being very confident, making all of these confident statements about what lucid dreaming was, and most of them were wrong, to be frank. And I was just getting annoyed, because there I am thinking, well, I've written one of the world's best-selling books on this subject, and here I am being lectured by this pleb. I'm getting very annoyed. And then I wake up, because it was just a dream, and I hadn't asked the question, what am I wrong about? Because if I had, I would have realized I was wrong on a more fundamental level, assuming any of it was real. And just to be clear, you can ask this question, what am I wrong about absolutely anything. Those two examples lean slightly to the deeper, more philosophical side, but it could be as straightforward as thinking, I've been using this word, let's say literally, for years. Am I using it correctly? And there's literally no place where you can't use this question in your life. You'll find benefits in all aspects of who you are. This is essentially proactive humility. It is an audit of your brain. Why do you think the things you think? Why do you believe the things you believe? Why do you have certain assumptions? Why do you like certain things? And the goal here isn't to end up feeling bad about yourself or useless or stupid or anything like that. It's to remind you that brains get by on best guesses and just good enough. But we can't be lucid dreamers if we do that. A human brain and human knowledge is always a work in progress, and the only way you can progress is to understand the flaws in your thinking, your blind spots, your assumptions, your misunderstandings. When you start to audit your mind, then you start to grow. And as you become comfortable with being wrong about things, with not knowing things fully, with being humble, then it's far more likely that when you're in a dream that you'll notice. Because you won't be tripping yourself up with ego and the need to be right, and then you'll recognize what's really going on. But what's going on right now is this video is coming to an end, but if you want to expand your mind a little bit further, try watching one of the videos on the screen right now. I'll see you there.